I didn't just lose a project that day, I lost the air in my lungs, the ground under my feet, and every shred of dignity I thought I'd earned. He stood there, my boss, with that smug smile, dismissing months of my life with 5 careless words. Don't be so dramatic. I had poured everything into that project. I'm not exaggerating when I say I gave it pieces of myself I can't get back. I stopped visiting my parents on weekends. I missed birthdays. I watched my friendships wilt because I was always too busy. My laptop became my pillow. Spreadsheets blurred into my dreams, and I measured my worth by how many emails I could fire off before midnight. And still, I believed it would all mean something. That project was my baby. I was the first one to see its potential, the one who drafted the plan when it was just a scribble on a whiteboard. I stayed late polishing slide decks, writing code when no one else would, answering client questions at 2 in the morning. Every piece of it had my fingerprints. I thought this was it, the moment my career finally meant more than just a job. The morning it happened, I was running on 4 hours of sleep and too much caffeine. My heart was racing, but it wasn't fear. It was excitement. Today, the team was scheduled to present our progress to upper management. My work was finally going to shine. I imagined the nods of approval, the quiet recognition that I wasn't just some junior in the corner. Instead, my boss cleared his throat in the conference room, looked straight at me in front of 15 people, and said, "Actually, you're off the project, effective immediately." The words punched the air out of my chest. At first, I thought I misheard. My hands tightened on the notebook I'd been holding, pages crumpling under my fingers. "What?" I whispered. My voice cracked, too soft for the room. He didn't even hesitate. He smiled. God, that smile. And said, "You're too invested. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. Don't be so dramatic." And then he laughed. Laughed. The room echoed with his chuckle, shallow and sharp, like the snap of a trap closing. No one else laughed, but no one spoke either. That silence was worse. Colleagues shifted in their seats, eyes darting between me and the table, avoiding my gaze like I'd suddenly turned into a cautionary tale. Heat burned my face. I wanted to scream, to stand up and fight, to remind them that this was my work. But my throat locked. My tongue felt heavy. I sat there, swallowing humiliation like broken glass. He continued as if nothing had happened. "We'll move forward without her input," he said, flipping to the next slide, the slide I had created. He didn't credit me, didn't even acknowledge it. It was as though I'd been erased from the very thing I built. I caught a reflection of myself in the conference room window, pale, small, insignificant. My heart thundered in my ears. I wanted to disappear into the glass, dissolve into the city skyline outside, anywhere but here. One by one, the managers nodded at his words. They looked impressed. They looked convinced. They looked at him as if he were the architect, not the thief. I sat frozen, watching my work become his performance. When the meeting ended, chairs scraped, papers shuffled, and the room emptied without a single glance in my direction. No pats on the back. No whispered encouragement. Nothing. Just the sound of footsteps fading away while I remained seated, nailed to my humiliation. I remember staring at my hands. They were trembling, not from anger, but from the crushing realization that I was invisible, disposable. He walked past me as if I weren't there, clapping a colleague on the shoulder, cracking another joke. The word dramatic still rang in my skull, sticky and poisonous. That was how he saw me. Not as a worker, not as a mind, just a problem, a punchline. I gathered my things slowly, forcing my hands to stop shaking. My laptop felt heavier than usual, like it was carrying the weight of betrayal. I walked out of that conference room, head down, every step echoing with shame. But what I didn't know then, what he didn't know either, was that humiliation doesn't break people like me. It hardens us. And his laugh, that smug, careless laugh, would become the very thing that destroyed him. After the meeting, I told myself to breathe, to just keep moving. But the truth is, I felt like a ghost wandering hallways I used to own. Every step back to my desk was heavier than the last. People avoided my eyes. It wasn't open hostility. It was worse. Pity mixed with self-preservation. They had seen what happened in that conference room. They knew the danger of being too close to someone my boss had just humiliated. I sat down, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen. My files were still there, neatly organized folders I had built for months. Reports, drafts, research, prototypes. My fingerprints were everywhere, yet none of it belonged to me anymore. It felt like watching your home get looted while you're tied to a chair, forced to stay quiet. One coworker, Sarah, approached me cautiously. She lowered her voice and whispered, "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair." Her words hit me like water on parched soil, but before I could answer, she glanced nervously around the office and added, "Just keep your head down, okay? You don't want to make it worse." And then she walked away, quick, like even compassion was dangerous. I sat there, jaw clenched, feeling the walls close in. Keep my head down? Pretend it didn't happen. That was what everyone wanted me to do. To swallow it, like it was just another bad day. But it wasn't. This wasn't just a bad day. It was a theft. My ideas, my effort, my reputation, all stripped away with a smirk and a laugh. The hours dragged, my inbox filled with small, menial tasks. Things far below my level. Updating spreadsheets, booking meeting rooms, proofreading notes. I had gone from building a flagship project to being a glorified assistant overnight. I overheard them talking in the break room, my boss's voice, booming, confident. She was too emotional, couldn't handle the pressure. I had to step in. And laughter followed, not from everyone, but enough. I froze by the doorway, invisible, listening to my own story, rewritten without me. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was how easily people accepted them. They wanted to believe he was right. It made the world simpler. He was strong, decisive. I was weak, dramatic. It was a story that fit neatly into their comfort zones. That night, I went home to my tiny apartment and collapsed onto the couch. The city lights outside blurred through my tears. I replayed it all again and again, every cruel word, every sidelong glance, every moment of silence where no one spoke up for me. I opened my notebook, the one I kept for personal thoughts, not work. The page stared back, empty and accusing. My hand shook as I wrote, "He stole everything, and I let him." I hated myself for that sentence, for believing even for a moment that silence meant consent. But the truth was harder. Silence meant survival. The next morning, I walked back into the office, determined to act normal. My boss smiled at me like nothing had happened, like stripping me of months of work was just another Tuesday. He tossed a small assignment onto my desk with a casual, "Make yourself useful." I nodded, forced a tight smile, and did as told. On the surface, I was calm. Inside, I was bleeding. By lunchtime, I realized something unsettling. The people around me weren't cruel. Not really. They were scared. Scared of him. Scared of losing their jobs. Scared of becoming the next target. And fear makes cowards of all of us. But as I sat there, stabbing at a cold salad I couldn't taste, another thought took root. If silence was survival for them, maybe it didn't have to be for me. Maybe survival for me meant something else. I didn't know what yet. I didn't know how. But a part of me, the stubborn part, the one that had built that project from nothing, refused to let his laugh be the final word. And that was the first day I stopped thinking like a victim and started thinking like a witness. Watching, waiting, quietly preparing for a war he didn't even know he had started. The days that followed felt like walking through a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I watched him stand in meetings and take credit for work that wasn't his. Work that was mine. He used my research, my graphs, my carefully crafted pitches, and wrapped them in his polished voice. And they believed him, every single time. Executives nodded like disciples, scribbling down his innovative ideas, the same ideas I'd spent sleepless nights perfecting. One morning I sat quietly in the back of the conference room, heart pounding as he unveiled a feature I had proposed weeks ago in an internal memo. Word for word, slide for slide, it was mine. I could almost feel the phantom weight of the flash drive I'd given him. Trusting he'd review it before the meeting, instead he stripped my name away and stitched my work into his crown. And when the applause came, it was thunderous. I clapped too. God help me, I clapped with the rest of them. Because what else could I do? Stand up and scream? Call him out? They'd look at me like I was unhinged. Dramatic. That word again. Always that word. I left the meeting room with my stomach twisted in knots. The hallway felt narrower than usual, my breath shallow, my palms damp. I ducked into the bathroom, locked the stall door, and pressed both hands against my mouth to muffle the sobs. The tile floor blurred beneath me. I'd never felt so small, so powerless. But beneath the tears, something else pulsed. Anger. A low, simmering anger that cut through the grief like a blade. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my thoughts looping in circles. Every sacrifice I'd made, every piece of myself I'd given to that project, now belonged to him. And he didn't just take it, he mocked me while doing it. I remembered his laugh, that sharp, dismissive laugh, and my chest burned. I started noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. The way he exaggerated progress and updates, the subtle lies he slipped into his reports, the shortcuts he took and covered up. He wasn't just stealing from me, he was building his entire reputation on smoke and mirrors. One afternoon, while delivering documents to his office, I caught sight of his desk, papers scattered, his screen open. My eyes flicked across emails he hadn't closed fast enough. There it was, an attachment. My original draft, the one he'd claimed as his own. My name still visible in the metadata. He hadn't even bothered to erase the evidence. I felt a strange mix of fury and satisfaction. He thought he was untouchable. He thought no one would ever look close enough to see the cracks. That was the moment the idea first sparked. Maybe I couldn't scream the truth. Maybe I couldn't confront him directly. But what if I could prove it? What if I could show everyone exactly who he was? The thought terrified me. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't some ruthless corporate climber. I was just someone who worked hard and wanted recognition for it. But now I wanted something else. I wanted him exposed. That evening I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook. The city hummed outside my window, but all I could hear was the scratching of my pen as I began to write. I listed everything I remembered, the stolen slides, the rewritten memos, the erased credits, the lies in reports, a timeline of betrayal. Each entry sharpened my focus. For the first time in weeks, my tears dried. My hands stopped trembling. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness, and witnesses keep records. I closed the notebook, pressing my palm against the cover as if sealing a promise. He thought he'd silenced me. He thought humiliation would be enough to bury me. But he forgot something crucial. Humiliation doesn't kill you. It changes you. And as I turned off the light and slid into bed, one thought whispered louder than all the rest. This isn't over. It started small, almost accidental. I was staying late one evening, finishing up the kind of busy work he loved to throw my way. The office was quiet, only the hum of computers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights above. Most people had gone home hours ago. He had too, or so I thought. On my way to the copier room, I passed by his office. The door was half open, lights still on. Curiosity tugged at me. I don't know what made me stop, but something in me whispered, "Look closer." Stacks of documents were spread across his desk, his laptop open. He must have stepped out for a call because the cursor blinked on an email draft. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But after everything he'd done, my conscience was quieter than my instincts. My eyes landed on an attached file. My heart skipped. It was the same slide deck I had worked on for weeks, only stripped of my name, his signature pasted at the bottom. A trail of edited by, and the metadata betrayed the truth. It was mine first. I froze. My breath caught. Proof! Actual, undeniable proof. I wanted to scream, to print it all out and slam it on the conference table in front of everyone who ever doubted me. But then I stopped myself. That would be dramatic. And wasn't that the word he loved to use against me? No. If I was going to do this, I had to be smart, precise, cold. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. I replayed it over and over, like a song stuck on repeat. His arrogance was his weakness. He didn't even bother hiding the theft. He thought no one would dare question him. The next day, I started watching more carefully. I noticed the way he'd copy text from my drafts into his reports, the way he referenced his research, but never knew the finer details when asked questions. He was a fraud wrapped in confidence, and slowly I began to collect things. At first it was small, screenshots, duplicate files, dates and timestamps, then emails where he thanked me for drafts that he later presented as his own. I saved everything in a private folder, encrypted, hidden behind layers of passwords. Each piece of evidence felt like a stone laid in the foundation of something bigger, something that could shake the walls he thought were unbreakable. Still, there were moments of doubt, nights when I lay awake asking myself if I was crazy, if I was risking everything over pride. But then I'd hear his laugh again in my head, that laugh that reduced my worth to a joke. And I knew I wasn't crazy. I was right. One Friday afternoon, the turning point came. He forwarded me a draft of a presentation he was set to deliver to executives on Monday. He called it his masterpiece. I opened it and nearly choked. It was my work. Entire sections lifted from the research I had written, my words rearranged but still bleeding through the cracks. He hadn't even bothered to change the formatting, and there at the bottom was his name, bold and shining like a thief's signature on stolen art. That was when something in me shifted. I wasn't hurt anymore, not even angry. The grief, the humiliation, the tears, they drained out of me like poison leaving the body. What replaced it wasn't fire. It was ice, cold, clear, and sharp. I realized then that I had been waiting for someone to save me, for a colleague to speak up, for justice to simply appear. But no one was coming. No one ever would. If I wanted justice, I'd have to carve it out myself. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open. The list of betrayals had grown, but now it wasn't just a diary of pain. It was a plan. Step 1, collect everything. Step 2, wait for the perfect moment. Step 3, let him bury himself in his own lies. As I wrote, my hand didn't shake anymore. My eyes didn't blur with tears. For the first time since he humiliated me, I felt steady, in control. I wasn't just surviving his cruelty now. I was preparing for the day it turned back on him. And I knew when that day came, it wouldn't be dramatic at all. It would be devastating. After that night, everything about the way I moved through the office changed. On the surface, I was quiet, compliant, the model of someone who had accepted their demotion. I smiled when asked to take notes, nodded when ordered to fetch data, kept my head down when he strutted into the room, with my work repackaged as his brilliance. To him, I must have looked broken, but underneath, I was taking notes of a different kind. Every word he said in meetings, every file he touched, every email he forwarded with my attachments, I documented. Dates, times, recipients. I became my own shadow, slipping behind him, invisible but recording every step. It was almost laughable how arrogant he was. He'd call me into his office, hand me drafts of his work, and ask me to polish them. Drafts that still bore my formatting, my phrasing. He never noticed when I copied them to a secure drive before returning the revised versions. He thought I was too defeated to care. What he didn't realize was that I was building a case stronger than any presentation he could fake. Meanwhile, the whispers in the office grew. Some colleagues started to notice small cracks. He couldn't answer detailed questions about his research. He contradicted himself in reports. His explanations sounded rehearsed, but no one dared say it out loud. Fear still ruled the air, so I let the silence protect me while I worked. I started preparing for the day the spotlight would turn. Not yet, not too soon, because timing was everything. If I revealed my hand too early, he'd spin it as a misunderstanding. He'd use his charm, his rank, and everyone's fear to bury me again. No, I needed him to dig his own grave first. I waited, patient, watching, and he did not disappoint. One morning he sent an email blast to senior management, proudly sharing a new proposal. It was my draft from 2 months earlier, identical. He hadn't even bothered to remove my file name from the footer. That arrogance was the gift I'd been waiting for. I screenshotted everything, attached it to my growing folder of evidence, labeled, dated, airtight. At the same time, I played the role he expected of me. I nodded when he dismissed me in meetings. I forced polite laughs when he cracked jokes at my expense. I became invisible by design, letting him believe I was no threat. And in that invisibility, I found power. Because invisibility is the perfect camouflage. The more he believed I was nothing, the more reckless he became. He bragged to clients about his innovations. He signed reports without reading them. He built his tower higher and higher, blind to the fact that the foundation was already crumbling. I thought back to the night I wrote my plan in my notebook. Step 3. Let him bury himself. That was exactly what he was doing, one careless lie at a time. At home, I refined my files, built timelines, cross-referenced emails. I practiced what I would say when the time came, how I would reveal it all. No yelling, no tears, just cold, undeniable facts. But more than that, I thought about the moment, the stage, the exact place where the truth would matter most. And then it came to me. The upcoming board presentation, the one he had been bragging about for weeks, the one where the entire leadership team would be present. He was preparing to take a victory lap. He thought it would cement his reputation. He thought it would be his crowning moment. And I knew it would be his undoing. The days leading up to it were torture. My heart pounded every time I opened my hidden folder, every time I rehearsed the calm voice I would need to hold. Doubt whispered in the back of my mind. What if no one believes me? What if they think I'm just bitter, dramatic? But then I would remember his laugh, that sharp, mocking laugh, and it fueled me like fire in my veins. No, I wasn't doing this out of bitterness. I wasn't doing this to be dramatic. I was doing this because the truth mattered, and because he had underestimated the wrong person. The day of the board presentation arrived like a storm on the horizon. I sat at my desk that morning, hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Weeks of preparation, of collecting evidence, of playing the quiet shadow. Today it would all come together. He walked past me in his tailored suit, radiating smug confidence. He winked at one of the assistants, muttered a joke about finally showing the board what real leadership looks like. He didn't even glance at me. Why would he? In his mind, I was already forgotten. We filed into the presentation room. Polished wood table, glass walls, the kind of sterile perfection that screamed importance. The entire leadership team was there, along with several department heads. I slipped into a seat near the back, notebook in hand, invisible as always. He began with his usual charm, jokes, polished slides, dramatic pauses that he thought made him look brilliant. I knew every word that was about to come out of his mouth because I had written most of them. And then came the moment. He clicked to the slide that was mine, down to the phrasing, the formatting, the unique design choices I had labored over. My chest tightened, but this time not with humiliation, with resolve. One of the board members interrupted him mid-sentence. "This is impressive. Can you walk us through how you developed this framework?" I held my breath. He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. He stumbled into a vague explanation, fumbling with buzzwords that didn't connect. My heart pounded. The cracks were finally visible, and that was when I stood up. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "If I may," I said, addressing the board directly. All heads turned. My boss froze, his eyes widening as though he'd seen a ghost. I stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. Inside were the documents, the drafts, the emails, proof lined up like dominoes. These materials were originally developed by me over the past 6 months. Here are the original timestamps, the metadata, and the email chains that show the transfer of files. What you've just seen is my work, presented without attribution. The silence was deafening. The board members leaned in, scanning the papers. I saw the recognition dawning in their eyes, the undeniable evidence, the blatant theft. My boss tried to laugh it off. "This is a misunderstanding. She's emotional, But I cut him off, my voice firm. "Don't call me dramatic. Facts aren't drama, and the facts are right here." The words landed like a hammer. His face drained of color. He stammered, tried to spin, but the room was no longer on his side. Questions flew at him from every angle. Why hadn't he disclosed the collaboration? Why were there identical drafts with my name on them? Why was his version stripped of metadata? The more he spoke, the deeper he dug. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his voice cracking under the pressure. The polished mask he wore every day crumbled, piece by piece, until the smug confidence was replaced by something raw and ugly, panic. And me? I stood taller than I had in months. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't let him bait me into emotion. I simply laid out the truth, detail after detail, until the room no longer needed me to convince them. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. When it was over, the board thanked me for my candor and integrity. They asked him to step outside. He didn't look at me as he left, shoulders hunched, his laugh long gone. Later that afternoon, the announcement circulated quietly. He was being relieved of his duties, pending investigation. In office language, that meant one thing. His career here was over. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen. Around me, whispers filled the air. Some people avoided me still, unsure what to say. Others gave small nods, quiet acknowledgments, but none of it mattered as much as the feeling in my chest. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. It was release, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for too long. I thought back to the first day he humiliated me when he laughed and told me not to be dramatic. How small and broken I felt in that moment. And now those words belonged to him. Because what could be more dramatic than watching your entire empire collapse in front of the very people you tried to impress? I closed my notebook, the same one that had once held my tears, my doubts, my plan. This chapter was finished. Humiliation didn't break me. It forged me. And the next time someone tried to laugh at my worth, I knew exactly how I'd answer.